In Atlas Shrugged, we don't often find that Dagny Taggart and Hank Rearden make simple mistakes. They make pretty complicated mistakes. They do act consistently on conflicting or incorrect premises until they learn the source of these errors, of course, and then they start working through them. Although these complex mistakes have moral consequences, they are ultimately errors of knowledge. Dagny and Hank, in particular, are scrupulous in their thinking and dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of the looters' motivations. They make tremendous mistakes due to their inability to understand the looters and their own inadvertent role in destroying their businesses and happiness by helping the looters. However, they do not engage in evasion or reject reason. Hank does hold the defense mechanism of repression, not allowing himself to become consciously aware of his emotions. But he actively works to overcome his moral conflicts despite his psychological challenge. Ayn Rand describes Dagny's major mistakes in her journals. All right, I'll just read this as fast as I can. No. Dagny thinks she can run Taggart Transcontinental with incompetence and parasites, either by training them or merely by treating them as robots who will take her orders and function without personal initiative or responsibility, while she, in effect, is the spark of initiative, the bearer of responsibility for a whole collective. This can't be done. This is her crucial error. This is where she fails. Sorry. But both these errors of over-optimism and overconfidence are excusable and understandable because they proceed from a creator's nature and virtues, because they proceed from strength and courage, not from weakness and fear and evasion. As Hugh Axton predicted before Dagny left the valley, you'll come back, because yours is an error of knowledge, not a moral failure, not an act of surrender to evil, but the only last act of being victim to your own virtue. She does eventually recognize and correct her mistake, and of course she does come back. Hank suffers from the same over-optimism and generosity of goodwill as Dagny. In the chapter featuring Cheryl Taggart's wedding, the bracelet scene, when Francisco makes the financial bluff and everybody, all the looters start scurrying around and leaving. After that, Hank drops Lillian off at the station on the false assumption that she would be taking the train home, unaware that she would be following him. Perhaps he should have been suspicious of her. However, he still considers her worthy of respect and believes he has no right to impose on her, unfortunately. Right after this, in the chapter White Blackmail, Hank goes straight to Dagny's apartment to apologize for his behavior at the wedding and for subjecting her to Lillian. He doesn't try to avoid her. He doesn't just go home and say, "Oh, what have I done?" but immediately acts to make amends, even though he knows that he doesn't have much to give. He offers Dagny some form of apology for putting her in an awful situation, and admits that he understands how hard it must be for her while he is still married. That's all he can do. Dagny sets him straight and confirms that she accepts the situation on her own terms as a traitor, but admits that his suffering is making her sad. It's like, run, Hank, be happy. Live your life and be happy a little bit. She tells him there is nothing to forgive. He counters with explaining that the situation is hell for him and he wishes he were punished more. Dagny reminds him, "So long as you wish to remain married, whatever your reason, I have no right to resent it. My way of trading is to know that the joy you give me is paid for by the joy you get from me, not by your suffering or mine." Dagny doesn't want to receive apologies, but she does want to see Hank happy. Hank has the courage and honesty to admit his faults to her. However, He does not have the integrity and confidence, not until later in the chapter Anti-Greed, after Dagny's speech on Bertram Scudder's show. Remember, I slept with Hank Rearden. I loved Hank Rearden. You know? Hank finally makes atonement for his errors in their relationship. I love this quote here. I can't ask you to forgive me. We're far beyond such terms. And the only atonement I can offer you is the fact that I am happy. That I am happy, my darling, not that I suffer. I am happy that I have seen the truth, even if my power of sight is all that's left to me now. Were I to surrender to pain and give up in futile regret that my own error has wrecked my past, that would be the act of final treason, the ultimate failure toward the truth I regret having failed. Here he is talking about the ultimate failure of staying down. Not falling down, but staying down, which he refuses to do. He has finally left Lillian, but knows he can no longer have Dagny. Despite this loss, he has found strength in the moral convictions, in the correct moral convictions, and he has learned from his mistakes. He can start over with confidence. Instead of acting like a miserable, cowering man who can't stop saying, sorry, 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 you know, like out of some Woody Allen movie, as if his suffering would make Dagny more satisfied in forgiving him. Instead, Hank gives her a sight of an achievement, which, as you all know, is the greatest gift another human being can give to another. His own ability to recognize his mistakes in their full meaning, to offer her proof of his happiness and pride in learning from those mistakes, and gratitude and admiration for her actions. He also refuses to give in to the pain and guilt of regret and correctly unchains himself from this potential burden, which would have been a mistake in itself. He knows that Dagny, above all, wants to see him happy, and he makes amends to her by showing that he is. Of course, Hank Rearden wasn't always able to prevent the worst consequences from happening. He losing his romantic partner, his mills, his money, his mines, his everything. And so for all of us, we are not always able to prevent the worst consequences from happening. Due to a mistake, we might lose our jobs, our friendships, and so many other values. However, as Hank so eloquently states, if my love of truth is left as my only possession, then the greater the loss behind me, the greater the pride I may take in the price I have paid for that love of truth. Then the wreckage will not become a funeral mount above me, but will serve as a height I have to climb to attain a wider field of vision. That's an excellent approach to mistakes. So the mistake embracing mentality is the reality embracing mentality. By the way, I'm almost done. It's not how many times you avoided making mistakes. It's the virtues that you've practiced in handling them that will build your confidence and strengthen your integrity. By learning from our mistakes, we are ultimately able to make more of them by trying new experiences in life and, like Howard Roark, taking more worthwhile risks. And we will have the knowledge and confidence that we can handle the consequences as we have dealt with them more often and succeeded at learning their lessons. This will eventually increase our flourishing and diminish our true failures. Now let's re-examine Ayn Rand's journal about her own mistake. My greatest personal mistake is ever to allow a word or moment that doesn't count, that I do not refer to my own basic principles. Every word, every action, every moment counts. This is the pattern on which everybody makes mistakes or becomes irrational, not relating their one action or one conviction to another. In other words, not having integrity. Here, Ayn Rand expresses her moral conviction that every moment she experiences, every action she takes, and every word that she speaks is valued by her and should be given the best attention and care possible, especially those moments that were mistaken. Her own basic principles include practicing honesty, courage, integrity, and confidence. Ayn Rand was proud of learning from her mistakes and examining them in the full, bright sunlight of her reason and her virtues. And I hope you will be inspired to do so as well. And I'll leave you with this one last little trinket that I found from her letters. To recognize one's own mistake in an argument and to admit it is a rare act of honesty and one of the cardinal virtues. I sincerely respect you for it. Thank you.